I'm Etzion from Haifa, Israel. Today is the 1st of November, 2025. As usual, we start with a short musical piece. It's from 12 years ago. It is hiding. It's from the I lived in the town of Mevaseret, which is 10 kilometers eastward of Jerusalem. And there I was participating with the wind band. They say it was during the Hanukkah. Okay, in a wide screen. I'm hiding here, playing the flute. So that's initially in the beginning when I started to study music. 1972, I was studying how to play the flute.
פחות מעניינת מסעודיה, כי...
Okay, the whole thing, I cut it, and maybe I cut it or not. Doesn't matter. It's cute, memorial from 12 years ago. And after that, a year or two later, I started to study the bassoon. Today, of course, I'm studying the bassoon, still in our Haifa wind band. But I like to bring sometimes old memories, and it's cute. You know, the Hanukkah, the Jewish Diwali, as a memorial of the victory of the Jews against the Hellenistic Empire. They decided the descendants, the successors of Alexander the Great, they wanted to impose their Hellenistic ideology on the entire world. Even Alexander, when he came to Palestine, then they didn't call it Palestine, they called it Judea or Yehuda. He didn't call it, use the word J instead of yeah. This later on was adopted. The tradition said when he came to the land of Yehuda, the elders of the people, of the Jewish people, they were not called Jewish people, started to be called Yehudim at that time, because they were actually the tribe of Yehuda, the last tribe which survived the first exile. We're talking about the second temple. And then when Alexander came, he saw the elders, and he dismounted from his horse, his famous horse, and he prostrated himself before the elders of the Jewish people, and he always generous, wonders what's going on, and he said, before I'm entering a battle, I could see these people came, I saw their image, and then I was waiting, thanks to them, presumably. But his successor started to impose the restrictions on the Jewish people, forbade studying the Torah, forbade keeping the Shabbos, forbade circumcision. They wanted to make the whole world like one. And most of the nations didn't care. They have their gods, they want this, they didn't care, except the Jewish people usually were a thorn in the eye of all these empires. And they made a revolt, and eventually they won against all the odds. It was Matityahu, the Maccabee family, the priests of the temple, not the first time, and they won, and they got their independence for close to 80 years. And after this independence, the next time we have the Jewish independence are these days. They lost their independence through internal conflict over power. The descendants of the Maccabees had of fight over who is the heir. Established a corrupted regime of kings and queens, and they were disputed who is the heir, so they called Pompey from Rome to settle the dispute. So the Jews invited Rome to Judea. They didn't conquer, they didn't invade Judea, the Romans. So the Romans came, they were invited. So they came, why should we go out? We settled them. It's a nice piece of land. Anyways, you would travel along the coast to travel from Egypt to Syria and what we call what today is Turkey, etc. Then they would travel along the coast and nobody would disturb them. Judea didn't rule the coastline so much, and they didn't care. But when they entered Judea, I think one of the main things they discovered in the land of Israel, the mountains of salt in the Dead Sea, natural mines of endless amount of salt. In those days, they paid their soldiers, used to give them each month a cake of salt. Salt was a very rare commodity. Just imagine those days. For where to get salt, it's necessary for not only for eating and for preserving food, for all kinds of chemistry, etc. They were doing all kinds of things. They discovered endless mountain, a treasure trove of salt, which was for them trillions and trillions. So why should they live? Most likely, it's not in the history, but the name of soldiers in Latin is if I'm not wrong, soldat. Soldat is from salt. They're being paid by salt. Okay, we'll read the discourses of the discourse. We'll share with you a few anecdotes. Discourses, here are the discourses. We continue sharing the discourses of Meher Baba. We had 3 sessions concerning the ego and its termination, and now we're sharing the removal of sanskaras. We read already 2 chapters. Now we're in chapter 3, the wiping out of sanskaras. So this discourse says, understand sanskara is key, and I could say it quite honestly, you don't understand the problem of sanskaras, you don't understand anything. It might happen for all of us. We lose this cycle of sojourn, coming back so close to the avatar. And I see, unfortunately, why personally I'm so involved with sanskaras, because from 1976, before I started to translate the Discourses of Meher Baba into Hebrew, which was one of my obligations after I received the Meher Baba Center of Jerusalem. I was ordered or instructed to finish this work of the translation before me, which eventually I did. Eventually it was published in Hebrew for the 3 people who were interested, but it's none of my business. So what happens, the Baba gave me from 76 an entire course, 15 years, non-stop years, special intimate tutoring, how to deal with sanskaras. So I developed some sensitivity when I share with people if they're contracting sanskaras or not. He taught me how to take a sanskara, to set to absorb sanskaras, to give it to him, so he can deal with it. So that's a whole long story. I shared this in the past through my personal meeting with you. But from this, I developed some sensitivity about this, as I can feel that many people in our dear community don't understand they're getting involved with problems of sanskaras, especially when you judge your president or your governors or the general circumstances. You cannot stop judging good and bad, good and bad. We don't know what is good and bad. I also don't know. I just take a circumstance, the people. I take my our government and give it to Baba. Hopefully, we will work on them and give them the right insights as what to do, how to handle the circumstance. That's the only thing we can do. You have to give it to Baba. Then he can do something about this. Otherwise, it doesn't interfere. That's what I understood. It doesn't interfere in this earthly circumstance unless we humans give it to him and the person to take care of it. This is our main spiritual obligation, to give the circumstance to the avatar and ask him to take care of it. Otherwise, he will not do it. That's what it is. So, love of Sadguru, perfect master, is particularly important because it invites contact with the Sadguru. To such contact, the aspirant receives from the master impressions that have the special potency of undoing other past impressions, thus completely transforming the tenor of his life. The recipient of the impressions may entirely give up all the habits of life and ways of thought. Such contact changes and elevates the tone of the most depraved life. The person might have been leading a life of reckless dissipation without ever thinking of anything other than the fulfillment of mundane desires. He might have been caught up in the thirst for possession and power, with no ideal other than that of acquiring and hoarding money, making merry. However, even such a person who cannot by any stretch of imagination think of freedom from earthly fetters may find that the sanskaras he receives from his contact with Sadguru are potent enough to drop forever a curtain on his old manner of thought and existence, and to open for him entirely new vistas of a higher and freer life. The impressions received from the master might be equally beneficial To an intellectual and cultured person whose vision is nevertheless circumscribed, whose imagination can at best appreciate the beauty of art and literature, and whose altruism cannot go beyond the limits of his neighborhood or the boundaries of his country. Such a person would, on receiving impressions from a master, be lifted to still higher modes of life. The Sadguru can raise the aspirant from the ordinary intellectual level of consciousness to the level of consciousness where there is inspiration and intuition, and then onward to the level of insight and illumination that culminates in his merging into the infinite. This rising of the aspirant corresponds to his progress from the mundane sphere to the subtle sphere, from the subtle sphere to the mental sphere, and finally from the mental sphere to the state of freedom. The last step implies complete wiping out of all sanskaras, natural or non-natural, positive or negative. To take the analogy of the string wood around a stick, this process of the wiping out sanskaras consists in cutting the string with a pair of scissors. The erasing of all sanskaras, which is implied, is the final release of consciousness from all illusion and bondage, can never be achieved except through the grace of a Sadguru. But such active intervention by a Sadguru presupposes an unrestrained relationship between the aspirant and the master, which can be established only when the aspirant succeeds in complete self-surrender to him. Self-surrender implies obedience to all the orders of the master. When all your desires and actions are guided by him and are the result of you obeying his orders, he becomes directly responsible for them. Thus, when self-surrender is thorough, the responsibility for your release from sanskaras is devolved upon the master. And under this new condition, the master annihilates all your sanskaras in no time. Obedience to the master, as implied in full self-surrender, is of two kinds, intellectual and literal. Of those two types of obedience, intellectual obedience comes first and is a preliminary to literal obedience, which is more fruitful. When you are intellectually convinced about the greatness and perfection of the master, you have love and respect for him, but are unable to follow his orders literally. Reason being the basis of your conviction, you find it difficult to divorce it from your understanding of the master and his orders. The two are inextricably intertwined with each other. Your reasoned faith holds you within the limits of intellectual obedience. This phase of the pupil is left undisturbed by the master, and all the appeals of obedience offered by him are intellectualized in order to suit the pupil's taste and caliber. Through intellectual obedience to the master, you can annihilate all your sanskaras, provided you're sincere in your logical interpretation of his orders and their execution. But the result comes much quicker if your obedience is literal. Literal obedience is the effect of the rock-like faith and deep love that the master inspires in the pupil. Through his human appeal, the overflowing radiance of the master's halo and the effulgence of his purity and compassion are mainly responsible for creating in the pupil an unswerving faith, which prepares him to follow the master's orders implicitly, irrespective of their satisfying his critical spirit. Such literal obedience is not even bound by the requirement that the real significance of the orders should be within the intellectual comprehension of the pupil. And it is the best type of obedience to which you can aspire through such implicit and unquestioning obedience. When the crooked knots of your desires and sanskaras are set straight, is also through such obedience that a deep link is created between the master and the pupil, with the result that there is an unhindered and perennial flow of spiritual wisdom and power into the pupil. At this stage, the pupil becomes spiritual son or daughter of the master. In due time, he or she is freed from all individualistic and sanskaric ties. Then, such a rare one also becomes a master. The Sadguru perfect master has a position and power that is unique. There are many souls in the world who are more or less advanced on the spiritual path, but there are few who have crossed all 6 stages of the internal spheres of consciousness and become one with the infinite source of existence, knowledge and bliss. Sadhguru has not only experienced the different planes of consciousness, but he actually permeates the very being of all souls because of his having become one with the infinite. He is a pivot of universal activity. In a sense, to him are due all your thoughts and actions, your joys and sorrows, your frets and fumes, your strength and weaknesses, your possessions and surrenderance, and your love and longing. He not only pervades all existence, but is consciously conversant with the cosmic law of cause and effect, the complex working of the sanskaras of individual souls. The causes of individual happiness or misery, vices or virtues are as much known to him as the causes of cosmic changes and upheavals. Every being is an open book for the infinite searchlight of his omnipresent consciousness. Because of his union with the infinite, the master is endowed with unlimited power, and in the twinkling of an eye, he can annihilate all the sanskaras of the soul and liberate it from all entanglements and bondage. So we finished reading the 3 discourses on sanskaras. And how to understand sanskaras and how to absorb it. Come to real understanding from experience, not from, because we can read I read these discourses many times, many dozens of times, maybe up to 50 times, possibly, in this one lifespan, maybe. And he make me 1 inch more clever, or understood it, hopefully, when Baba himself started to give me tutoring how to deal with this. Over the years, it took many years to start to understand it. And I kept on reading it while he was tutoring me, give me this personal tutorials over these years. At the same time, I was working on the discourses. So the experiences of dealing with sanskaras and the intellectual effort to understand it, to work in both directions. That's the way it goes. So eventually, slowly, but obviously, when I received some feeling, you don't see sanskara, these are all energies. The consequences of any action of ours is being recorded in the subconscious mind, and it enslaves us. So the best sanskara is a sanskara of the total resignations to the master. And me, fortunately, come to the threshold of the avatar, surrender to the avatar without any motive. Dedicate your life to it, whatsoever you can do. Take some responsibility, help his cause. Many of us say, okay, the avatar is gone. Where is now the perfect master supposed to guide us? Why they are not here? My understanding. You come closer to the threshold of the avatar. Why do you need perfect master? What has to do with the physical body? Some I heard people asking, well, we would like to meet a physical master, so will help us. And I said, to come to the master to share his burden, or you want to thrust your personal burden on his head? You want to give him more troubles or to remove his troubles? Why do you go to him? And many think, well, you go to the master, so he will cut short our burden. But presumably, we'll reach the threshold of a master, or again the avatar, when we finish all these lifespans of service for humanity. It takes time. Once of birth, and again and again. You have a quota to finish serving humanity, so we'll come again to the orbit of the perfect masters and the avatar. So all of us who are complaining about this, what's going to be in this life, we are fortunate enough to come to the threshold of the avatar, stay there, just move through this threshold and stay in his orbit. And I understood through my training in this life, if you maintain a state of mind that don't keep any grudges whatsoever against anyone or anything, and these grudges also come through constant judgment. This is a horrible addiction of us. It's very hard to get rid of this. It's uprooted in our souls, like sticky. Judge all the time. You must get out of this. And if you cannot get out of this, just leave everything to him. And if you don't keep any grudges, we have the opportunity entering the realm of perfect love and staying from then on, moving in the awe of the avatar, in his circle, whatever it is, for keeps. I think as far as I'm concerned, such a gift was never given to humanity. And many of us are gambling over it. We think that, well, you stick to holding his dharma. How can you hold his dharma and keep grudges and abuse and insult politicians or people you don't like? Well, you do the one way to decide what is good and bad. And anyway, do you see, many of us say we don't recognize our past failures of re-establishing a special government on earth. The entire world is a deep ignorance. It's our responsibility. We don't understand. Most of the people in all the spiritual communities I'm engaged with, they simply don't realize, they don't understand that this is our liability. Okay, I'll end this session with a little story I wrote as a consequence of my meeting of the Baba came to my life, etc. I'll share it with you, and after that, I'll receive from one of my friends in Meher Baba fresh photos of wonderful sunsets in Meher Baba. Okay. See all the time, all kinds of things. Here, this is a Baba story. Now, this Baba story is on my website, meherbabaisrael.com. And on this meherbabaisrael.com, there are a Hebrew section and English section. You can come there. Many stories about the first disciple of Baba in Israel, Keri Ben Shammai, and all kinds of stories which I wrote for Baba. I wrote for Baba all kinds of skits. Actually, I wrote all these skits for his amusement. And I took it on myself due to the nature of my surrender story in 1972, shortly after he came to my life. What shall I do so I will not be such a burden on him? Experiencing the avatar holding the entire universe on his head, and I became worried, and I'm going to tell you this story, that my person might be too much on him. The 1 gram above story. Have you heard about a story which is completely false and completely true at the same time? Brother Eruch told Baba, with your grace, everything is possible. This particular episode happened during 1972, a few weeks after beloved Meher walked into my life and made me aware of who he is at once. And as if, like a vision, I was seeing an incredible giant. His legs were standing on earth. His knees were already shrouded by the clouds, so I actually could not see his face. The giant was holding the entire universe, entire creation on his shoulders, with no apparent difficulty. Have you seen those little ants which sometimes crawl between the hairs of your legs or hands? Really teeny ants, they must feel like walking in a jungle while walking on us, and so I felt, standing on the toes of the giant being, feeling helpless and hopeless, quite a worthless creature. The giant was holding millions of tons in one hand, maybe billions of tons, zillions, who can tell? And I looked at myself, poor me, how much could I take? 1 gram, hardly. The thought kept into my mind, can the giant hold all this weight forever? What if, just if, he will give in? What if my 1 little gram would be the last straw on his back? I became extremely worried for the well-being of my beloved, and mind you, I was the spiritual zero. That would be a good start. I was minus 100 spiritually. And first I had to climb to the 0 level. But this is another Baba story altogether. So I had to lift my little 1 gram of responsibility, just one little speck of the creation dust, which burdens my beloved. And I kept on exercising, lifting this weight, just 1 gram, which was not so easy. And when I felt eventually quite comfortable with my little 1 gram of responsibility, I said to myself, I should remove 1 gram of weight from my beloved's shoulder. If I can lift 1 gram already, why not 2? I added 1 more gram, and later on more, and a few more. Till this day. And you know what happened one day? I saw him face to face, and I must confess that Dean climbed so clean to such lofty heights. I haven't at all. But he, most likely of sheer amusement, took fancy of this little ant trying to help him, this work, and lowered himself to my level. So as you see, this story is completely false because it never really happened. Completely true, as it is happening all the time. You do care for unburdening your beloved. I'm sure you all do. By His grace, everything is possible. Etzion. You like this little story? It's cute. Short story. I have more such strange Baba stories. You can look at my website. And now, I received from my Baba friends in Meher Baba photos, current photos of sunset in Meher Baba. It's supposed to be continuous, as I don't want to do. There used to be an error. Let's see. To get to it and see why it's not, doesn't want to. Usually what I do, experiment it before I start to make sure that everything is working. I'll try again. I think that sometimes they're on their mood. Now that's it. You'll find it. And let it escape. Okay, we'll go to the original. Just want to make it work. Whether it likes it or not. But I think I got it right, maybe. Trying to find out. Yeah. Wonderful sunset in Meher Baba. Where is it exactly? I don't know, he didn't tell me. But it is most likely behind the Samadhi westward. I'm not sure, I don't know, he didn't tell me exactly where is it. But Meher Baba is often wonderful photos. Okay, that's it, more or less. Thank you very much, folks, for this sharing. See you next week. And next week we'll start again, resume our reading of the book of Genesis, which I wrote the interpretation, which Baba gave me the insight in Meher Baba 20 years ago concerning the book of Genesis. Book of Genesis, in Exodus, which Baba said were true because Master Moses was true. The book of Exodus is accurate. It's the story, the script of the Ten Commandments of the movie of Cecil B. DeMille. Baba ascertained that it is accurate, and for his own reasons decided that I should work on it. And I discovered through his inspiration that actually this is the very first original theme of creation and contains many insights which Baba didn't deal with in this time. Even he gave God Speaks, the theme of creation, very detailed, And what he said, of course, it's not included physically or literally in the book of Genesis, but it's all hidden there behind the veil. But we don't have the spiritual capabilities of unraveling it. But while I was working on it, I had these experiences. So we'll continue next week, our willing, the book of Genesis. Last time, which is still of Joseph or Joseph, what a fundamental issue. So stop the sharing and recording.